Welcome to Standard Deviation.
Hello, Kevin.
Hello, Ciara. I was just remembering one time we had some ants.
Ooh, there's an ant right here.
Oh, yeah, that's why I was remembering, because we have some ants now.
Because it's current.
Yeah. And I was talking about how, oh, there's another one.
Motherfucker.
Wow. Did you put sugar in your coffee or something?
No, I never put sugar in my coffee.
They just must be tired. Anyway.
Oh, because they're drinking coffee.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I was talking about, like, there's some pretty good natural, non-toxic ways to get rid of ants, like cayenne powder. Works.
Doesn't
really
work.
well. It does work.
No.
We've used it here. It works.
I use poison.
Anyway, what I was going to say is that last time when we were talking about this, you were like, I don't mind the ants. They're cute.
Yeah, they're fine. I mean, as far as, like,
You
insects...
said they're cute. I just thought that was cute.
They are pretty cute. They're little...
I had never thought about it, but once you said it, I was like, yeah. They're pretty cute. And they don't really cause problems other than, philosophical problems.
What philosophical problems?
Just image problems,
Oh, it makes us look trashy?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then
yeah, I mean, if I
feel
have guests...
trashy, it's like, oh.
Yeah, if I have guests over, I don't want them saying I have ants in my kitchen, but, like, they're really small and
they don't bite. They're not fire ants. I feel like maybe this says something about us. Like, maybe we should lead instead of following. And next time we have company over for a little shindig, maybe we should say, you know what? Everybody who has a problem with ants, maybe you need to think about your life.
If you have a problem with ants, you can get out.
Yeah. Like, what did ants ever do to you? Although ants have done a lot to me. When I was a kid, I was allergic. And I get bit by ants a lot. I grew up in Florida, which is the Australia of the United States.
Right.
There's a lot of wildlife. Anyway, mosquitoes and red ants would get me, and they'd get my ankles, and then my ankle would swell up for like 3 weeks.
Right.
Just cover it in that gel. Anyway,
so I was looking at videos of magpies before you came.
This is like a whole thing for you now.
I know.
I was getting magpie ads on Facebook. Like, hey, I heard you like magpies.
That is fucking weird. Because I know you're not searching magpies.
No,
I was searching magpies.
I've never in my life written the word magpie. and it just hurt us talking about them.
What does a magpie ad look like?
It was an ad for that horse whisperer or dog whisperer or whatever that
Caesar.
That guy, yeah, and he had posted a video of this guy who had a pet magpie, this like hunky like fireman looking dude who would like snuggle with his magpie, and it's like, oh, look at this, and it's like, look, first of all, I don't give a shit about magpies, right? And secondly, if I did, like, that's not a very smart algorithm. It's just like, oh, here's a guy cuddling one. Like, I like cheeseburgers too. Are you gonna show me a guy cuddling a cheeseburger?
Oh, no, but they might
selling
sell
me?
cheeseburgers.
Yeah, I guess.
Well, that's what I was wondering. It's like, what's a magpie ad? Are they selling you a magpie?
I mean, I guess they were just trying to push that guy's webpage, the dog whisperer. What's his name?
Caesar something?
Yeah, I can never remember that dude's name.
Is it Caesar Milan?
Sure. That sounds right, yeah.
I might be confusing him with someone else, though.
Do you think he's a fraud?
I don't know. I don't know anything
Probably
about
not. He's probably legit. I don't know anything about him either.
Have you watched his show?
I think I did like years ago, like maybe 15 years ago.
Yeah, I watched it a long time ago, too. I mean, he's consistent.
Yeah, it seemed legit.
So,
and I mean, I've had some weird experiences with dogs, and I've had to learn a little bit about dog psychology. And apparently, you can influence them. Like I'm not an expert. I've fucked it up a few times. Like I read somewhere that when you're meeting a strange dog for the first time, you should, before you make eye contact, you should offer it the back of your hand so it can sniff you and grow comfortable.
That's what I do to men.
Yeah,
but they have to kiss
Me
it.
too. I get in a lot of fights. It's weird. Well, it's every man I meet. And then, but anyway, so I tried that with this strange dog, and it fucking bit me.
Oh,
it's like the only time I've ever been bitten by a dog was the one time I was trying a dog whispering trick to make it, like me.
I've never heard that trick before. Are you sure it's a dog whisperer trick?
Well, not him specifically. I just read it on the internet somewhere or in a book or something. I don't know where. I was like 12.
The thing I remember about Caesar, and again, it's been a while since I saw his show, was that a lot of his advice was, all about like asserting yourself as the alpha, and that had a lot to do with, some Jordan Peterson advice, standing up straight with your shoulders back.
I'll tell you stories in a minute.
Okay, it's my time to talk.
Yeah, I said in a minute. That was a placeholder.
You didn't have to say that.
I did because I'll forget. Now
Okay.
I can't forget because we're arguing about it.
So he gave advice like stand up straight with your shoulders back, and he did a lot of like that noise to kind of correct dogs that they seemed really responsive to. And a lot of it was if someone had a dog that was very hyperactive, most people's instinct is to like yell at the dog to shut up or maybe like hold him down or something like that. And he would say like, you can't do that. You have to, if the dog's misbehaving, you have to ignore it. Those were the main advice that I saw.
Interesting. Yeah, from what I understand, I don't know a lot about dogs, but from what I understand, a lot of times they misbehave when you're not there because they're bored and they're crazy. You know, they go crazy easily. The smart ones do. But I guess I've never really been in a position where there was a dog misbehaving like while I was there. You know, I guess
you've never been around a dog that was like yipping and barking and trying to jump up on you.
Yeah. Well, I guess yeah. Yeah, in those cases, I just ignore them. Like, what are you going to do?
Yell at them and try and like shove them off you and stuff like that?
Best case scenario, you're going to just scare it. And that's not good. You don't want to scare a dog because then they get weird.
I mean, that's people's instinct.
I guess.
It's barking, so yell over it. I'm not saying it's right, but it makes sense. Like, shut up.
Here's something that I noticed years ago, and every time I say it, I'm like a little self-conscious because I sound like a crazy person. But I generally treat kids and dogs roughly the same, like children and dogs, because like when they're young enough and undisciplined enough, both children and dogs, to do that kind of shit, you just ignore them, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
they want attention, so you try to correct them, and if they don't listen to your correction, then the second thing to do is to ignore it, and then from there, like, because they'll eventually get tired, reward it when it's acting good.
You know, another thing I do that's funny.
What?
That I do with both children and dogs is I talk to them like they're like human adults. People think it's weird, and I'm just like, well, just take your kid home then. Like, I don't know how to talk to kids. Get out of here.
That's not weird.
No, it's not.
A lot of people do that.
And the thing is, like, the people I know who have kids who do that also have really smart kids.
I've heard that argument.
Language development seems quicker.
I want to push back on that a little bit. I've heard people claim that, where they're like, I talk to my kid like a grown-up, and they're much smarter for it. There is like a lot of evidence to show that like kids learn and are much more responsive to baby talk, basically, when you're like, like this, like kind of that sing-songy, like with a lot of inflection and stuff like that. Like they are really drawn to that. So, I mean, I know at a certain point, you know, there's like age-appropriate ways to like talk to children, but there is something to be said about that sort of like baby child talk. Yeah,
I think I'm talking more like when they're like beyond the sing-songy stage. You know, they're at that stage where like people don't know what to do with them yet, and they can't handle the hard facts of life, but they also aren't babies.
Yeah.
So people just placate them, and it's like insulting to watch. Like, you know, 6 or 7, and they just ignore their important questions. And I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. This is a good question. Let's talk about it. You know?
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah, because like,
I don't know why anyone would think that was weird.
And I think the sing-songy thing, that kind of reminded me of I've heard of something called the zone. I think it's called the zone of proximal improvement, which is this thing where for anybody, like adults or whatever, people excel at their job or hobbies or school when they only need help with like 15% of what they're doing, and they've got the other 85% down, but they cannot do that last 15% without help. Because something about basically getting the gist of things but still needing to rely on other people is like engaging and stimulating. I'm sorry, I lost you there. So help with what? Anything, like work or school, or just it's kind of like being, you know, the zone. I think that's actually where the zone comes from, like being in the zone when you're like really productive. And yeah, I think that's where it comes from. It's the zone of proximal improvement, where you're like pretty efficient, but you still have to like look shit up and learn shit while you're doing stuff. Okay. I might be talking out of my ass, though, because I think... Are we still talking about kids? Just people in general. Oh, okay. It just reminded me of that, because it does seem like I've been in a position as a manager where I would have people who I needed to learn a bunch of shit, and, you know, you can tell pretty quick that if you just give people a lot of shit that there's no way they're going to do, like, more than half of it, you know? Sure. Then it's really discouraging. It's kind of like having stretch goals. Like, a lot of corporations have stretch goals. Like, we're going to double revenue this quarter. They know they're not going to, but it actually backfires, because then everybody's like, well, what's the point in putting any effort into this, because it's going to fail anyway. Right. Anyway, people are like that too, and I guess kids to some extent. So, like, yeah, if you talk to a 3-year-old, like a 30-year-old, they're not going to get much out of that, yeah, I imagine. But if you talk to a 6-year-old, like a 30-year-old, maybe.
Maybe.
Or maybe talk to a 6-year-old like a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
But then
how do you talk to a 10-year-old?
Yeah. Yeah. Whoa. Just blew out my own mind there. Relativity.
Should we answer
I was going to tell a
questions?
dog story.
Go on.
I might have
Tell
talked
me
about
your
this
dog story.
before. So what's funny is you said that you're supposed to assert yourself as the alpha.
Yeah.
So I've had this issue. There were, I think, 2 or 3 dogs and 1 cat who would often urinate as soon as they saw me. And it freaked me out a lot. And there's one in particular that was my roommate's dog, and it was a Great Dane. It was a large dog. And I mean, it was a Great Dane puppy, but it was still big. It was like 90 pounds. And
It was like a baby elephant.
yeah. And I'd get home from work, and it would just like squat down and pee. And I couldn't figure it out. And I would try to like talk to, because it seemed kind of scared, you know? And I would like talk to it and like pet it and try to be soothing and comforting, and it would just pee more. I didn't know what to do, so I started Googling around. And apparently what you're supposed to do in that situation is the opposite of what I was doing. So what they're doing, apparently, the theory is, the dog psychology theory, is that they're trying to demonstrate submission because they're scared, basically. They are scared. And anything you do when they're behaving that way, anything you do that puts attention on them, they'll take as dominance. So like eye contact, talking, petting, all that, it's like further dominance, I guess. So they just pee more. So I had this dog problem, and I ended up just like following the advice on the internet, which was to completely ignore the dog for a while, and then kind of slowly, gradually acknowledge its presence and start interacting with it. And after like 2 weeks, it was fixed. But that was like the third dog that I had that problem with. And that was the first
what
time
were
I
you doing
figured
these
out.
dogs?
Nothing. That's the thing, is like I loved them. They're great dogs. Then this one in particular was one of the sweetest. I mean, she did shit all over the house when we were at work every day. There was one time she busted into a 50-pound dog food bag, ate all of it, and shit it all out. We had a huge tile living room. There was not one spot of tile or one tile square that didn't have shit on it.
Gross.
Yeah, it was like a 2-hour cleanup. It was remarkable. Anyway, but I still love the dog. It was a cute little dog.
Yeah, it reminds me of my ex had a cat that liked to make statements fecally. Fecally? Is that a word?
Express yourself anally.
Express yourself anally. Yeah. That's a reference to the way this odd veterinary assistant would talk to me recently when I took my cat in. She wanted to say that my cat pooped. And she like paused. She's a very awkward woman. She's like, Kimiko expressed herself anally. I'm like, okay. Anyways.
I would want to argue with that lady. Like, just fucking speak
You
English
would feel
to me.
so sorry for her. This woman like was just like she just had the most nervous energy I've ever seen in a person. She's constantly smiling, but it was a nervous smile the whole time. And it was just like, took her forever to spit anything out, and just like, ugh, like, yeah.
I'd probably let that slide then.
Yeah. I kind of kept going back and forth between like wanting to hug her and wanting to smack her, because like I get annoyed when people don't, when it comes to business, like speak to me efficiently, like get to the point and like stop wasting my time. Anyways, I digress. What was my story? Oh yeah. My ex had a cat who, when he was mad, as cats sometimes do, would poop in certain places to make a statement. And one time me and my ex went out on a trip, and this cat also, by the way, needed his litter box cleaned every day or he would poop outside of it. So we had a friend cat sit, and she, I don't know, maybe she like was just gone for like a day or something. And she came home to find that this cat had pooped in rows on my ex-boyfriend's side of the bed.
Wow. Only on his side of the bed.
Yeah.
What?
It was like very deliberate.
So the cat didn't like your ex-boyfriend? Is that what that
Oh,
means?
he was mad that we left.
Oh, but why did he target that side of the bed?
Because he's his owner. He's the owner. Like,
oh, it was his cat.
Yeah, it was his cat.
Oh, okay. I thought it was your cat.
No.
He
This
like,
was
get this fucker out of here.
No, this was a cat he had for like, at the time, maybe like 6 years or something.
Cats are so weird. Like, most cats are so chill, but man, my friend Paul has a cat, and I went to visit him in New York, and I stayed with him for like a month, and that cat hated me. That was the first cat I think I've ever met that just I could not get along with, no matter what I did. I would walk by, and literally every time I walked by, it would like swat at me with its claws. It tore holes in my jeans as I was walking by it. Yeah.
Yeah, they can be little shits for sure.
Yeah, I guess it was a territory thing because it was a small apartment. You know, it's a New York apartment with 3 people in it, which, I mean, one person barely fit in that apartment. So I just don't like that cat anymore. I blame the cat. It's the cat's fault.
All right.
The cat needs to learn some diplomacy skills is what I'm saying.
Do you want to answer a question?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. This is from one of our listeners, and I feel like I should give a little context to this question. This is from a client of mine, a longtime client of mine, and I feel like our relationship has turned from like dominatrix sub to therapist client because he always comes to me with his problems.
I could see that happening a lot.
It doesn't that much,
No.
to be honest, no.
Because you have boundaries, probably.
Yeah. Well, and it just doesn't happen. Like,
Really?
Yeah. No, not really. But I've just been talking to this guy forever. Anyways, he's a basket case. He told me I can like explain this without giving any identifying details, but he's a basket case and he's hung up on this girl, and every day he makes up shit in his head thinking that she is mad at him. And there will be no reason for him to think this, but he'll just twist some text or something the wrong way. And I know we all kind of do this to a bit degree. Like, you know, texting is kind of vague and you can't really, you know, you can add your own subtext to it. I'm not talking about that. This guy does this to like a whole other level of extreme. Like she can be like, oh, you know, I really like you. And he'd be like, she didn't say love. Like,
wow.
Yeah, crazy. So every day he's like, oh my God, she hates me. It's an emergency. And it never, ever, ever is. So recently because I was getting so sick of it. Every day was something new. Every day was this emergency that she hates him. And like, it got to the point I was like, no, she doesn't. I don't even have to hear the story. I know you're making this up in your head. So he was doing it again and he was freaking out because, she hadn't texted him that day. And so
what time was it?
Like 2:00. And he thought that meant that she hated him.
Sure.
And finally I was like, okay, how can I like, I don't know, how can I, because I'm tired of like constantly reassuring him of the same thing. I was like, what can I do differently? So I'm like, all right, I'm going to make a bet with you. I'm going to bet you $200 that she's not mad at you. And if she is, I'll give you, you know, some clips or whatever. And so like the deal was if she hadn't texted him in 3 days, then I lost the bet. Or if she explicitly said that she was mad at him or didn't want to talk to him anymore. Otherwise I would win. And he couldn't possibly wait until Tuesday, which was like 3 days. And he was just freaking out the whole time. And I was like, look, just text her and ask her if she's mad. And anyways, long story short, I won $200 because she wasn't mad at him. He was completely making it up in his head. And then, I'm not joking, 5 seconds later, he's freaking out after the conversation they had to verify that she wasn't mad because now he thought that she was mad now, given the response that he gave to her when she verified that she wasn't mad. So stupid. Anyways, we're talking and I was like, I gotta go. I'm recording a podcast. And he said, can I ask you a question for the podcast? And I said, yes, of course. So here is his questions. How do you two personally preserve a sense of self-esteem and confidence so that your sense of self-worth isn't anchored in other people's actions? I want to be somebody who doesn't wilt emotionally whenever I am not validated or if I'm mistreated, but I have trouble doing so in this practice.
That is a really good question.
So my thought is I reject the premise. I'll speak for myself. I was going to say we, but I'll speak for myself. My self-esteem is dependent on other people's opinions, but it's only certain people. It's not anyone and everyone. And I think that starts with your parents. And I was personally fortunate to have parents who like loved me and validated me and supported me, and we had a healthy relationship. And I think that, doing a little armchair psychology, I think people who've had that end up being the type of people who quote unquote don't really care what anyone thinks, or they're not codependent. Other people's opinions like doesn't have a strong hold on how they feel about themselves. But there are always going to be certain people that do. Like there's certain people like like you, like I respect you a lot as a friend, and if like you thought badly of me, like that would affect me. Of course, it would depend on what the circumstance was, but you know, more or less, I respect your opinion, and so it would mean something to me if like you thought ill of me. And there's certain people, yeah, and there's certain people in my life that you know that's true, and that's the same with my family and stuff like this. And this particular person like had a pretty shitty upbringing with really shitty parents, so it makes sense to me that he's kind of this neurotic nutcase who's freaking out all the time, thinking that people hate him.
That makes sense. I think I agree like 50%.
Okay.
Maybe a little more than that. Maybe 60% with what you said. And here's why. What that sounds like, that situation you described, I've been in that situation before. It's pretty uncommon for me. These days, I don't even think it's possible. But a few years ago when I, cared about stuff, relationships and things, when I was like trying to date, I would occasionally fall into that trap of like overthinking everything, and everything seemed like this malevolent sign of something. And it was a lot of confusion. It was very confusing because like a lot of times I would know within like a day, I would know that my previous day's worth of worries were just pointless and stupid. And then the next day it would be the same thing again. And it was like, who am I? Like I know better, but I don't really. And that is anxiety. Mm-hmm. So it turns out I have had a pretty bad anxiety disorder for like most of my life. And we talked a little about this. I just recently found that out. I didn't know I had anxiety, which is weird because I have dissociative anxiety, which means that it doesn't feel personal. It's like, it's abstract. So it feels like deep philosophical problems. And as a kid, there was kind of like, I got made fun of a lot, but mostly by family because they were around me all the time. Because I would get like super broody and what?
Just because they're around you, it's like.
Well, I mean, like people who knew me,
like you're worthy of someone to be made fun of, and so since your family was around, they're going to make fun of you.
What? I didn't follow that.
Okay, so all right, you said I got made fun of a lot, mostly by family because they were around. No,
I mean because they were around enough to see my patterns, and like identify ridiculous fallacies in my trains of thought. But I would go on these like really what I thought were very deep philosophical diatribes about all the things that are wrong with the world and people and there was truth to all of it, some truth, but really that was a symptom of this sort of abstracted anxiety where I just had like negative emotions and I couldn't identify them, and that persists even now. I sometimes still will have like just weird, really emotional moments, and I'm like, which emotion is this? It's like there's a name for that. It's alexithymia. That's what that's called. Anyway,
when you don't know your emotion?
Yeah. Although I think alexithymia is usually more of a diagnosis. I haven't been diagnosed with that, but it's common in autism, for example. And I have been diagnosed with autism, which I don't think I believe, but yeah, it's this thing where like you're physiologically you feel the emotions, and you in a way you emotionally feel them, but not really. I feel like a lot of existentialist philosophers probably just had anxiety. Because, I mean, they're not wrong, but to be deeply, deeply existentially affected by things that are hard truths that are miserable, it sounds counterintuitive. It sounds like if you're being rational, you should be deeply affected. But, in fact, you shouldn't. And the way to confirm that is by working on releasing anxiety and becoming more emotionally stable, and then you won't be affected by those things, by and large.
Do you think you have good self-esteem?
I don't know. This is something I think about a lot because I have kind of a big ego. Mm-hmm. And I know sometimes that's a mechanism because of poor self-esteem. People will like develop kind of like a shield or something.
Like a narcissist.
Yeah. But I genuinely think very highly of myself, but I also think pretty poorly of myself, and I don't know what that is really. I mean, I think it's probably balanced. I have some great qualities and I have some really shitty qualities, and that's just people. But so what I was going to say is that, and I obviously I'm not qualified to diagnose this guy, and it's certainly not just from this description. Even if I knew him, I couldn't diagnose him because I'm not a doctor or whatever technically. But There I go again. When you're an adult and you have a pattern of thinking like this, that when it is a representative of an anxiety disorder, there could be lots of causes for that. I mean, there's medical causes for anxiety. There's physiological causes, biological, genetic, nutritional. I mean, it could be any number of things. But I think psychology is the most common. Probably, I'm basing that on nothing, but I think usually when people have an anxiety disorder, it's because of unresolved past trauma, psychological trauma. In my case, that's what it is, and I lost my train of thought.
Well, let me ask you this. So you said you agreed with me 60%.
Yes. So I do. So I think it's likely. I mostly agree with you. That's probably something from his past that's creating this cloud of confusion.
I'll give you a little more context. His dad used to beat him all the time and tell him he was worthless, constantly.
There you go. Case closed. Next question. No, I'm just kidding.
So he's missing a huge foundation, which is his parents should have been the first person to validate him and tell him that he was worthy and all that. And to not have that, you're starting off life, with.
Yeah. So in this case, I'll increase my agreement percentage to 85 probably.
Well, what part don't you agree with?
Well, this is the thing, is that it wasn't anything that I explicitly disagreed with. It was just a tentative agreement, because you can also have anxiety
and good parents.
Yes,
I agree.
I had great parents. They were incredibly supportive. They still are incredibly supportive, and I still am all fucked up.
Right.
And that's just how it goes sometimes.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. Yeah, you can have a great upbringing and still have issues.
But I will say, and I'm assuming he's going to listen to this, so I you sound like a smart guy. I think you know that I'm not qualified to diagnose you, but I will say this: I have been in that boat. It's terrible and dumb and almost impossible to get out of logically. This is the thing: you can't think your way out of it. The whole problem is that you're thinking feelings, and they don't mesh.
Right.
So the way I discovered I had anxiety was I just happened to be reading a list of anxiety symptoms. I have no idea why. I just read a lot. And I was like, this is just how I am. It was shit like that. It was one of the things on the list was a fear, a constant fear that you've upset someone or are going to upset someone. And that's something that I've cyclically gone through. Again, it's been years since I've had that. Well, probably a couple of years since I've had that issue. But when I was a younger man, it was every day. And that was also when I had much worse anxiety as well. Now I know that I had much worse anxiety. But the point is, what I was going to say is that I would recommend that this fellow check out, maybe he already knows he has anxiety. Who knows? But if not, check out just a list of anxiety symptoms and what people go through when they have anxiety that they don't know they have. And that when I started to understand some of the stuff that was happening in my head without my awareness, and the fact that it was easy for that to happen, that kind of blew my mind. I figured I knew what was going on up here, but no, as it turns out, it's a very small sliver of what goes on up here is in my conscious awareness. An even smaller sliver of that is in my conscious control. But becoming aware of the fact that thoughts in some cases are just mirrors of emotions, and therefore you end up in this butting heads with yourself because you're trying to process emotions cognitively, and then you end up just behaving irrationally, and it's really stressful and it goes nowhere.
Yeah, and not only that, but he is actively hurting his chances with this girl, because she apparently said to him, because she's going through something herself. I have no idea. I don't know exactly what it is. I haven't talked to her, but she was kind of going through some stuff, and she was upset dealing with that. And he was just like, oh my God, she hates me, making it about him. And she said something to the effect of I was trying to explain to you that, that I was going through something and you made it about you. And that is what he does. It's when someone expresses not the most perfect emotion that they're experiencing, or maybe setting a boundary, he immediately thinks, oh my God, you hate me, which then puts the other person in a position where they just have to reassure him. And that's not fair. To the other person, that they're in this relationship of I can't even tell someone how I feel. I can't even set a boundary because I'm going to have to spend the next hour reassuring him that I don't hate him.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it doesn't necessarily make it easier to fix it, but it does help to shift the perspective, and put some responsibility. Because the thing is, like, if you don't solve or alleviate the strain that's causing this dysfunctional emotional / cognitive state, you could at least manage it in a way that doesn't negatively impact other people.
Yeah.
If you look at it like you're trying to avoid negatively impacting the relationship, that's almost like just the same thing, because that's, in a way, I don't want to say it's selfish, but it is about what could happen to you, and it, to some extent, the other thing is too, because you might feel bad if you fuck things up for somebody else and that's happening to you, but that's too abstract. The point is that even if you are, even if you're right, just behaving in a level-headed way is only going to help. Mm-hmm. Because if you're right, then you're going to make it worse, and if you're wrong, you're going to make it worse by behaving as if you're afraid. Because whether you're right or wrong, you're making it worse by behaving that way.
Yeah.
And this also reminded me, something you said reminded me of, the effect it had on this girl. A friend of mine, Rebecca Hughes, a jiujitsuist.
Is that how you say it?
No, I just made that word up. There is a word for it. I don't know what it is. By the way, she just launched a cool online jiu-jitsu training program.
Oh, what's it called?
At campnebula.com.
Cool.
She goes by Beans of Nebula because she's a weirdo. But she posted like a meme or something once that said something like, seeking acceptance is a form of aggression. And I had to stop and think about that for a while because I didn't know what it meant. It had never crossed my mind. But then it occurred to me, yeah, I can see how, like, if you're, maybe aggression is kind of a strong word, but to be so bothered with your state and your well-being to the point that you actively have to have validation to feel kind of okay is, again, it's fucking things up for other people.
Right.
And it's easy to miss that, like all the times I was anxious like that and just asking too many questions and worrying about too many things. At no point was I thinking like, am I fucking up this person's day?
Right.
It was just like I was in such a panic that that's all I could think about. But in a sense, to go that far off the deep end, just trying to achieve explicit acceptance, is aggression. You're kind of demanding that somebody approve of you, and that's not going to work.
I think that is a good example of emotional labor. This term emotional labor comes up a lot, and I think a lot of it's like, oh, give me a break.
It's a bit overused sometimes.
It is quite overused. But I think it's a good example because, like, I care about this client. He's obviously been around a while. The fact that I'm even like interacting with him says something like this. But it is a massive burden to constantly reassure him of the same thing over and over and over again. Cause it's like, it never sinks in. Always the same issue. And yeah, that's something he needs to work on because it is going to damage relationships if he's just constantly needing reassurance from someone. It's a drag. It is emotional labor. You
just reminded me too of years ago. I've had similar cycles with other things, like not just with relationships, but one thing that used to fuck me up for several years. I was obsessed with just trying to figure out what my career was going to be. Like, what am I going to major in? I was already in my early 20s and didn't have a degree yet. And I started college when I was 15. So I was like, fuck, I've just spent like 7 years not getting a degree. And, I was afraid of my financial future. But it became an obsession. And to the point where it was literally my last thought before sleep, and my first thought in the morning was, oh God, what's my major going to be? I know so much about college majors. It's ridiculous. Like all the stats, salaries, employment rates. I used to read the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics website daily. Like I would spend hours a day reading about every profession in the world. Maybe I am autistic. I don't know. It's hard to say when I talk about shit like this.
You're a weird, that's for sure.
I am a weird. But then at one point, I remember I was talking to my friend Paul, the same friend with the asshole cat, and he was like really annoyed with me one day. And it was the first time I realized I had been talking obsessively about this problem for off and on for years, but it had been like culminating more and more in that period. And he was like exasperated, rightly so. And I had no idea that I was annoying him, because for me, it's just like this existential panic every day, and I'm trying to get it out, like, I need help. Somebody tell me what to do. Should I be a doctor or a lawyer? What kind of doctor? Doctor of philosophy? That's actually what I should have done. But anyway, going back and looking at that and realizing that it's the same pattern of thought and behavior, just with a different target. But they were both just anxiety. They were just detached cognitive anxiety. Meanwhile, my body I was sick all the time. Like, I was physically ill all the time. I went bald when I was 18. I went gray when I was like 24. This is chronic stress. Yeah.
Right. I think it's great that you're sharing all this, because another issue that this guy has is he thinks he's the only one going through this. He thinks everyone else is cool as a cucumber, doesn't have any issues, and he's the only like weirdo that's feeling these things. No. And so I think it's good that you're sharing this, because we all go through this to some degree. To some degree,
yeah. And some of us, people like he and I, can relate maybe on a level that a lot of people can't. But I'm glad that you brought this up, and I'm glad he brought it up, because like, even just talking about it now, I'm realizing, like, I never even put together the fact that career obsession and relationship obsession was just the same thing. It was, and they were both just different forms of seeking validation. But the philosophical abstract part isn't even the important part. The important part is that it was destructive. It was so harmful to my quality of life to just perseverate on these issues that, I mean, they're important, obviously. Companionship and your career, these are. And death, that's another one that about 4 years ago I started just freaking out that I'm going to die one day. Everybody's going to die one day. Like, and then, and I mean, and it's like, these are all things that matter, know, and they're hard, and there's really not a solution in the end, mostly because of that last one where you die. Although another way of looking at that is that's the solution.
Yeah.
That, interestingly, that actually led me to Stoicism. Well, that didn't lead me to Stoicism, but I had circuitously found Stoicism, as I found a lot of people do. This is an interesting thing. I know a lot of people who have had really hard pasts, and several of them have spontaneously espoused to me Stoic and or Buddhist philosophies, having no knowledge of Stoicism or Buddhism, which I think speaks to the quality of those philosophies, because they are what comes out of the fire of chaos that people experience in their lives. But anyway, one of the philosophies in Stoicism, there's a practice called memento mori that I've talked about on the show a little bit, where, and it's not just Stoicism, there's other, actually a Buddhist sect or Sufi sect has a very similar practice where they meditate on death. And people used to sometimes, I don't know if they considered themselves Stoics, but there were people who would carry around things like a skull pendant and just look at it to remind themselves that they're going to die. And that sounds kind of morbid on the surface if you don't dig into it. But the point was perspective. The point was that it is shitty that you're going to die, that everybody's going to die. I mean, some people don't think that's shitty, and that's fine. More power to you. But the idea is that you can't control that. But fearing it actively, devoting your energy to worrying about something that you don't control, is controlling your day-to-day life. And you're voluntarily giving up happiness because of that. And that, again, circuitously applies, I think, to some extent here. I lost my train of thought again.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that, though. It's good.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
It is. It's good stuff. I was going to say, yeah. Another reason I was glad that you brought this up and that he brought this up is because, I realized that connection just talking about it. But also, I just realized talking about it that I have like a more subtle, I mean, I know I have anxiety, but I have a more subtle existential abstract anxiety still that I hadn't really recognized until I started talking about this. So that's cool.
That's cool.
That's something to work on.
Let's do Am I the Asshole? So I have been reading this Reddit page called Am I the Asshole? And I thought it occurred to me that it would be a really good podcast fodder. So it's people that basically they go into this Reddit page and they tell a story, and the question is ultimately, am I the asshole or is this other person in the story the asshole? So let's see. I have a few picked out here.
That should be the name of my memoir.
Am
I the asshole?
That would be pretty good.
The first 30 years of my life. Just like, who's the asshole?
Okay.
It was me. Anyway.
All right. So this is the story. I'm probably a total ungrateful bitch, but hear me out. My boyfriend got me a Bath and Body Works gift set thing. If anyone here, in parentheses other women, know anything about Bath and Body Works sets, it's something you buy as a generic gift to 12-year-old girls. I've received these gifts every Christmas in my teens from my aunts, like every single year. It's not a bad gift, but it's a generic and something you usually gift to young girls or women when you have to buy them something and you don't know what else to get. The second I saw it, I told my boyfriend, thank you for the card and the Bath and Body Works set. I appreciate the sentiment, but it's a gift for 12-year-olds and we are going to return it. He got upset, extremely upset. He looked at me and said, I don't understand. You always ask me to rub lotion on your back, so I got you the cocoa butter like you always use. Instantly, the neurons in my brain started firing, and I felt like... Oh, sorry, I just clicked on it. And I felt like a complete piece of shit. To him, as a dude, Bath and Body Works is the only place that sells lotion. It makes complete sense why he bought that for me. He knows I use lotion every day, so Bath and Body Works was the perfect gift in his mind for me for Valentine's Day. I don't use their brand because, again, it's for really younger age group. But he's a guy. He couldn't have known that. We are in our late 20s, early 30s. After I understood that he bought it as a thoughtful gesture and not as a generic gift, I felt absolutely like an awful piece of shit. I apologized. He apologized. He's still mad, though, and thinks that I'm an ungrateful bitch. I tried to explain the above to him, but he doesn't understand. He says if I bought him a banana or a used shirt or whatever... for whatever holiday, he would have said thank you, loved it, and been happy no matter what. So, am I the asshole?
I have an opinion.
Okay. I also have an opinion.
What is yours?
First of all, she's absolutely right about giving a woman a bath set. That is a generic gift that you get someone when you don't know what else to get them. But a lot of guys don't know that. So I am sympathetic with the guy. It sounds like he really did try to get her something she liked, and he chose wrong. And that's okay. I am of the opinion that I 100% in support of telling someone if you don't like a gift, especially if it's from someone who's going to continue to give you gifts in the future. I'm not sure how tactfully she said it. It's kind of hard to say. According to her, she said, thank you. But then immediately she said, this is a gift for 12-year-olds. We're going to return it. So she might not have been so tactful with it. But I don't believe that, you should just say thank you and bite your tongue for whatever gift you get. If it's from someone that you don't know that well, yeah, maybe do that and then just re-gift the gift to someone else. But if it's your boyfriend, she doesn't want to keep getting these bath sets every Valentine's Day,
Yeah.
and that's what would happen if she was like, oh, thanks. So, yeah, if he got extremely upset, I think he's the asshole here.
Interesting. Well, you're wrong.
Okay. Go on.
She's the asshole. Next. No, I'll go on. So there's a couple things. First, this reminded me of the love languages. Do you remember that?
Yes, the 5 love languages.
Yeah, this has been trendy. Well, it was a couple years ago. There's a quiz out there based on a book or something, I guess, that purports to break down people's communication styles in loving relationships, close bonds, mostly romantic, but also family and friends and stuff. And it takes these 5 categories of communication and ranks them for each person based on their quiz results. And so, for example, to some people, gift giving is very important. If you want them to know that you care about them, you have to give them gifts. For other people, it's words of appreciation, physical affection, quality time, and acts of service. And like any personality model, it's not perfect. Of course, it can't be. But it's a fairly good heuristic, I think.
And it goes the other way, too. If you feel like perhaps your partner, doesn't love you or doesn't show that they love you, you might just not be recognizing their love language. You
Right.
might be like, well, I want to spend quality time with them. And he's thinking like, I tell her all the time that I love her. Like he's thinking he is doing it, you
Right.
know, but really it's a mismatch.
Yeah, I was in a relationship like that once, and it was a difficult relationship for various reasons. But one of them was I was regularly accused of not showing enough appreciation for my partner, and I was literally in this situation where I was like, I am spending all of my free time with her, and to me, that's the most valuable thing I have. It's quality time. That's definitely my number one love language, because, like, if I get off work and spend the rest of the day with somebody every day, that's it, you know, like that's commitment from me. That's appreciation. And it's all I ever wanted from her was the same thing. I was happy spending time with her, but she wanted acts of service and gifts. Mm-hmm. The language part, I think we were kind of on the same level. You know, we had similar emphasis on words, but
Words of affirmation.
Yeah. But this shit, and I didn't realize any of this until like 6 years later when I took this quiz, and I was like, oh my God, now it makes sense. Because I always thought she was crazy. She must have thought I was just an asshole, you know? Because I was like, why would I be here if I didn't love you? You know, like This is love. This is what it is to me. Anyway, so I think that is relevant here. I from this story, I don't know what their preferred shits are, but obviously there's a mismatch in the shits. But also, she's wrong.
Okay.
Because when you were reading it, like, her anger is palpable. She was mad about this gift. It wasn't just like, this is kind of a shitty gift, we'll talk about it later, and I'll help him buy me better stuff in the future. She was like aggressive about it. She was insulted by the gift. That's not an appropriate response.
What part do you think she was mad about it?
Well, I mean, it opens, like, from the beginning, she's saying how it's just this generic bullshit gift, and she immediately told him they're returning it. Like, this is not how you handle it. If there's a precedent for certain types of open communication around gifts, like, it's funny that you said you should be able to talk about that, because, like, this is one of the things that took me a very long time to figure out how to do with my family, because at holidays, and sometimes just randomly, I would receive gifts, you know, like everybody does, and almost always hated them. But I also had this weird guilt complex, like it was internalized anxiety, and I felt really bad getting rid of gifts, but I hated them. So I would, like, hold on to the shit that I was so frustrated to have, you know, and I was like, oh, what do I do?
Yeah.
I got all this shit that I hate, and I can't get rid of it, because then it means I don't care or something. And gradually I worked at it, and it had to eventually, this probably wasn't the best solution, but I had to tell my whole family, please don't buy me anything ever. And if you do, it should be edible. And if it's not edible, I'm going to throw it away, probably. And I have to make that clear. I literally had a family meeting where I told everybody, I'm going to throw away your gifts. And everybody throws away gifts. This is me being crazy, thinking that I had to spell this out. You know, people re-gift, they throw things away, it just happens. Nobody keeps every fucking present they're given. But the point is, yeah, being able to communicate openly about not liking gifts is important, and it's not easy, and it's very nuanced. It depends on the people, you know, individually and their dynamic together organically. But they don't have it figured out, obviously, and they clearly don't have any kind of precedent for doing that. And for her to just immediately respond with, we're going to return it because it's a 12-year-old gift, like, she's starting an argument because she didn't like a present. And she may have a point. Like, she may be hurt that he doesn't know her better, but she makes the point that she misunderstood. And it actually was a thoughtful gift, and he's just an idiot man. And by the end of it, she's admitting fault, but also asking if he's an asshole for still being upset.
Okay, you might be changing my mind. I suppose when I say he's the asshole, I was looking at it more in the abstract of just like the concept of being able to tell someone, especially your partner, that, you know, how you feel about a gift that they gave him, and be honest about that and have that kind of open dialogue.
I love that. I appreciate that shit so much.
I do too. And I'm the type of person who like for instance, I bought you a shirt the other day. It was like an impulse thing.
You bought me a shirt?
Yeah, you remember this. It was the Spicy Heck Boy shirt.
Oh, you said the other day. That was like a year ago.
Well, they don't know this.
Oh. I was just like, where is it?
It
like,
wasn't
what shirt did you
Well,
get?
first of all, it wasn't a year ago. It was maybe like 6 months ago.
Spicy Heck Boy.
So, yeah, it was a shirt that said Spicy Heck Boy. And I thought it was hilarious. And for whatever reason, I thought of you. And so I was like, I'm going to get this for Kevin. And then I thought about it. And I was like, well, Kevin doesn't really like to get gifts. For the same reason I don't. I think it's a burden to receive things that you don't want for reasons you just described. So I was like, well, if he doesn't want it, I'll wear it myself because it's a cool shirt. And then when I gave it to you, I was like, hey, I got you a shirt, but if you don't like it, I'm not offended. Like, I'll just wear it myself. And that is my philosophy with all sorts of gift giving. I do not push myself to buy people gifts when I don't know what to buy them or out of a sense of obligation. I buy gifts when the inspiration strikes me, when I see something that I'm like, it reminds me of someone. And I try to be humble enough to be like, my opinion might be wrong. You know, even though I thought of you, it's like, you actually might not wear this. So right. I give people the out, and I want everyone to behave that way. But I will say, like, I think, I'm changing my mind a little bit about this, because more than once she says, she describes herself as a total ungrateful bitch. He's like, oh, he thinks I'm an ungrateful bitch, like blah, blah, blah. And there actually was a follow-up where someone was like, did he really call you that? Or are you saying he called you that? And she was like, okay, yeah, he didn't really say that. So she's kind of straw-manning him here, where it's like, oh, he just thinks I'm an ungrateful bitch when...
Well, she was describing the behavior of an ungrateful bitch. If it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck.
I mean, I don't know. Like, because when I read this...
Just to be clear, I'm not actually saying she's an ungrateful bitch. I don't know this woman.
So when I first read the first line of Bath and Body Works gift set, I'm like, oh my God. I thought the exact same thing. Like, that's one of those things that, like, I think most women understand that men don't, is like, yeah, that is like this generic gift that I wouldn't say necessarily 12-year-old girls, but just women in general when you don't know what else to buy them.
The only time I've been in a Bath and Body Works was with a female friend of mine when I was like 16, and we went there because she wanted to go there and buy good smelly stuff. So like, I feel like I have been set up for failure on this one. Fortunately, I've never got somebody a gift basket from there, but like that could have happened. That could have been me.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
I've learned it from a woman. I learned it from your kind. I will say she got this Mandarin soap that was so awesome. I went back and bought some for myself.
Bath and Body Works isn't bad. It's not a bad place.
So good.
But
Mandarin
those gift
orange.
sets it's true. They're just these corny kind of gifts you give girls when you don't know what else.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I think that was it. No, I think, again, just to reiterate, I agree I don't think she's an asshole in the abstract of just communicating that with her partner, but it doesn't sound like she handled it right.
Yeah, that's the thing. She's not wrong for disliking the gift or for wanting to communicate that in a sense. But the way she did it sounds like maybe not a good way.
Yeah.
It's also funny, the whole generic gift thing, because like I remember the year that I was most proud of the gifts I got for my family for Christmas was I got everybody identical gift cards and put them in different sized boxes and wrapped them up with bows.
That's pretty clever.
Yeah. And then I could tell, like, as they were unwrapping them it was really anticlimactic because they thought it was a joke or something. Nobody asked, but they were all just like looking around like,
well, it was a joke, wasn't it?
No, that was their gifts.
Yeah, but the joke was putting it in different boxes, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a joke. Well, I mean, it's not really a joke. It's misdirection. Smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, but it was to make them laugh, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. But anyway, that was me going above and beyond. That's my version. And I don't mean like I'm just such a piece of shit that that's the most I can do. I mean like like it's stressful.
Yeah.
And like that took effort, and that the only reason it happened is because I was relatively happy that year and was like stable and exercising and eating nutritious food, and like that's what happens, you know. Like at my peak, I come up with different size boxes for the same gift card for my family. I
think that's cute.
But the thing is, they all knew me well enough that they were really impressed by it. They weren't like offended or anything. They were just like, oh my God. It's like when I show up to a family function, there's like genuinely amazed and pleased, not like I'm an asshole, but like, wow. He's not rocking back and forth fearing the end of the world. You know, I don't rock when I fear the end of the world. I do rock back and forth sometimes. But I was going to say something else. What was it? Fuck. I can't remember.
I gotta pee, so let's wrap this up.
Okay, this was a fun episode.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody, send us your listener questions and check out campnebula.com. Beans is a really good jiujitsuist, which is a word that I just made up. And she's also funny.
Bye, guys.
Bye.